Okay, we are live. Hi, everybody. Welcome back after small 1 week hiatus because we could not come up with a topic last week. But we got a lot of interest for this particular topic this week. That is roadmap for web development. And for that, actually, शुरू से शुरू करते हैं. I have some questions for you, which actually just start off from the very basic thing is कि a lot of new fields these days and a lot of new young mentees they ask this thing कि यार मतलब web development does it even like looking at the future 5-10 years should we even get into web development? Everybody is saying machine learning is future, data science is future, blockchain is future. So like is it even worthwhile to pursue web development? Some people I've heard even ask this. So what is your take on that?
यार काफी इंटरेस्टिंग है तो लाइक दिस इज समथिंग दैट हैवंट चेंज्ड इन लास्ट 12 years since I started coding. So आई रिमेम्बर 2010 में भी लोग यही बोलते थे कि अरे यार ये वेब डेवलपमेंट में तो कुछ नहीं है, नई चीजें आएंगी एंड you know front end engineering is not really the cool stuff. However, one thing that surprises me a lot is कि जो रियलिटी है इंडस्ट्री की, वेयर एक्चुअली लाइक देयर इज सच अ मैसिव डिमांड फॉर वेब डेवलपमेंट दैट एग्जिस्ट नॉट सिंस टुडे बट सिंस probably 2000, since web 2.0 started. Like
Right.
long back, like the first version was very static websites and like not really rich web interfaces, not the web apps but basic HTML and backend serving it. That was web 1.0, like maybe which started from 1995 to 2005 or so. 2005 के बाद आया था वेब 2.0. अभी तो वेब 3.0 की बात चल रही है, which is crypto etc. But
Right.
web 2.0 was like very rich web applications, that it's not just website alone. जैसे YouTube को भी देखते हैं तो it's not just a static website. There's lot more that goes to building an interface. Let's say actually any application that we see that we use these days, take YouTube, take Google Maps, take Gmail, take Facebook, take WhatsApp web, let's say, all of these are very very complicated web apps, right? So demand for like really solid web developers and even the salaries that have been so high, not from today but since 2010.
Yes, yes,
तब
yes.
भी लोग यही बोलते थे कि यार ये ना ये सब तो ठीक है बट कुछ कूल नहीं आता, तब IoT वगैरह का बहुत चला करता था. तो यार
Correct.
लाइक माय टेक इज कि ऑफ कोर्स मशीन लर्निंग, डेटा साइंस, ब्लॉकचेन, ऑल ऑफ दीज आर ग्रेट फील्ड्स, नो डाउट अबाउट इट. They will the kind of number of jobs in all these fields and impact is going to increase in future, not debating that. However, web development is something very very fundamental that have been exceptionally high in demand, not for shorter time but for a very long time, and it is going to be so. Let's see, like whatever data science might do, whatever machine learning might do, whatever concepts we might implement on blockchain, eventually it will be served on an interface, right? It has to be served through a medium. So that medium is going to remain always relevant. So I think thinking that is it relevant now or not, exceptionally relevant. Every company
Right.
is trying to hire folks strong with web development desperately, and of course no one has seen the future, but
Right.
at least basis my experience, basis trends that I see, I don't see any reason that for at least next 10 years there will be any decline in the demand for really strong web development engineers. So that is what my opinion is.
Right. No, I mean, when I look at things like Google Drive, something like that, or even, I mean, the kind of thing we are using to stream, like StreamYard.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
these things obviously need like super solid engineering, and these needs
Right.
keep increasing. Like, I think in the pandemic, so many things had to go online.
Right.
These things definitely keep
And
increasing, and I see that.
actually, one more misconception that I often see, and that is also not new, that has existed since even my college days. And what surprises me that even till date, those misconceptions have not been removed. People often
Right.
feel that web development is easier stuff, or like
Right.
doing
Right.
programming, computer programming is the real hard, cool stuff. It is also not so. When you
Right.
take a deep dive, like let's say if I ask you that how many people do you know who have capability to build something like Google Maps? How many people have capability to build something like web development engineering? Is not about HTML, CSS. It is not about that at all. HTML,
Right.
CSS eventually probably just constitute 10% or maybe even less of the entire web development stack. So I think understanding this is also important, that it is exceptionally challenging domain, exceptionally challenging field with a lot of very intellectually challenging problems to understand and solve.
Correct. So next, like the question that we have is like, let's say, very important thing that we definitely discussed, that web development definitely not irrelevant. Now that when people get started, तो क्या होता है कि I hear this from some mentees that lot of different people saying different things कि यार front end कर ले, back end कर ले. Some people say कि नहीं, दोनों अलग अलग करने से नहीं फायदा, full stack करना पड़ेगा. So
Right.
these three terms get thrown around a lot, and a lot of these young engineers, they get confused which one to do. People start thinking which one has better market value. People start thinking that if I don't do full stack, then I don't have value. So I mean, what should one do? What should be the mechanism to sort of decide this? And how do you even understand which one are you interested in? I sometimes ask people, hey, what are you interested in? And do that.
Right.
And then they ask me back, "Ki, how do I find out which one I'm interested in?" So
Yeah.
interesting discussion, but your
Right.
points on that.
Right. 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 No, so I agree with what you mentioned, that yeah, it's like what matters is that how good you are in any other domain. It's not like that you are a bad backend developer or a bad front end developer, and then just because you are a backend developer, you will like see, like there would be a backend developer at a salary of 3 lakhs a year at a very shitty company, and there will be another backend developer at a salary of 30-40 lakhs right out of college at a really good company, right? So it's
Correct.
not about that becoming a backend developer or front end developer will give you outcome, but being really good with whichever field you choose is what is going to give you outcome, right? Like even as a pure front end engineer, people might get hired at a salary of 30-40 lakhs at the best companies of the out there in the world right out of college as well. I know people who have even got into that already. So now, like as you asked, that like you will be able to perform best when you are doing something that you are enjoying, right? Like it's not that you are trying to chase something, but you are enjoying doing it, right? And as an outcome, of course, you have all the great career outcomes as well.
Yes.
How do you identify? I think like in tech, one very beautiful part is that whatever you want to explore, you can just start building, right? And you can explore it. I think the best way to figure out what you really enjoy is by doing it. It's just investment of maybe 15 days, 1 month, 2 months to try something out. What I have seen in terms of course, that left brain, right brain thing that exists in psychology as well. What I
Mm-hmm.
have seen is that front end usually is better for the people who are more on the creator side. Like for example, I have been a web developer throughout
Right.
my career. I enjoy building very polished web apps. To be very honest, I do not really get a kick if it is just crunching some numbers and I cannot really see it, that what output it has, right? On the
Right.
other hand, if I see that here is a web app I have built, here is how someone can use it, here are the interactions that people can do, that gives me a kick, right? That wow, I can see my creation, I can see what I have
Yes.
built, right?
Yes.
On the other hand, of course, there are people. So, for example, I can take example of Anshuman, very very close friend since college days. Now we are running Scalar together. So, what I see about him is that he enjoys more of doing solving very challenging abstract problems, which might not really be
Right.
visible on a screen, but kind of which is visible in your imagination, right?
Right.
And then being able to see the beauty in those mathematical constructs, or the kind of very impressive construct, very creative constructs that you can build in those abstract concepts.
Right.
So generally what I recommend is that people who enjoy creation, being able to see what you have built, generally front end full stack are generally like, it's my opinion, my experience, that they enjoy front end full stack more. And people who enjoy more of solving abstract problems, they enjoy back end side more. But as
Right.
I said, you can only know it for sure by doing it. Try building certain, let's say, APIs, backend stuff, optimization, see if you are really getting kick out of it. Try building certain web apps, see if you are getting kick out of it, and choose something that you enjoy.
Right. 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 So that makes sense actually. I think this similar story. I think back from my coding blog days also. So Prateek was used to be very interested. Prateek, my co-founder, he was very interested in problem solving. He got into some data science, machine learning things also as well. I was more interested in making apps and making websites and the front end side. So yeah,
Right,
I think
right,
it sounds like a very very fair advice that
right,
and some people have that thing. I think, you build something, and if it is not polished, you will not feel like publishing it yourself as well.
right,
Like,
right,
unless it looks cool and sexy, you don't feel like, like putting
right.
your own stamp on it. So that
Right.
that definitely is needed as a front-end engineer, I feel.
So web
Uh,
development, I can correlate web development a lot with these very artistic and creative roles, like let's say being a sculptor or being a painter. That if you are
mhm.
a sculptor, you make a very beautiful, let's say, statue, and then you want to see it from all the angles, and then if you see any imperfection before showing it to others, you want to improve it and then only show it to others, right? So I
Correct,
see
correct.
that, folks who are into web development, app development, like following similar thing, that you will
Right,
build, you are in love with what you have built, you are seeing it again and again, you are showing it
right.
to your friends that see what I have built, and if there is
Yeah.
any small imperfection that you see, you want to fix it before showing it to others. So that's very relatable
Yes.
to that.
Right, 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 right. I understand that. Actually, and there are some more questions that are coming in, which is about, how to become a great front-end dev, and, questions like that are coming in. And I actually wanted to, delve into this part. I mean, before we go into the back-end side and the full stack side, talking more about, front-end itself. Uh, one thing that's happening today, I feel, is that when you want to talk about front-end, people say that, pick up React or Vue.js or Angular. I mean, these three are today
Yeah,
very
yeah.
popular. And, for at least my 6, 7 years of experience, I have seen things like Backbone and Ember, and probably you have seen even older Knockout, Dojo, whatnot.
Right,
So
right,
these keep coming and going. Uh, but, which one should we pick? Like, what decision should we do to pick up a front end framework? And in
yeah.
what stage should we pick up a front end framework? Like, how much should we learn before we pick up a front end framework? What role does that solve? I think if you can shed some light on that as well.
Right, 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 right. Yeah, so to be very candid, and this narrative, like, what I'm suggesting might sound counter to a lot of narrative that we hear otherwise.
Yes.
That, like, of course, there are always fanboys, just like there are Apple fanboys, there are Android fanboys, there are Tesla
Right.
fanboys, there are, say BMW fanboys. In tech field, also similar thing exists. You will see that there are React fanboys who are like, React is God, everyone should just learn
Right.
React. There would be Angular fanboys who are, that, Angular is God, everyone should just learn Angular.
Yes.
So my opinion here is that front end, of course, there is no silver bullet. You cannot say that this particular framework is the best. The frameworks are, there might be a best choice for a particular project or for a particular thing that you need to build. For a particular, project, it might be that React works better for this one than Angular, or for some
Right.
other project, it might be that Vue.js work better than, say, Angular or React.
Right. Right.
When it comes to learning, another very important thing to understand is, and this is also a very common mistake that I see people making, in the earlier years or when in college, that before you jump into any of the framework, you have to learn and understand the fundamentals of web development first, right? See,
Mhm.
React is not what, let's say, a computer or a web browser understands. So for example,
Right.
if we talk about Chrome doesn't know what is React or what is Vue.js, what is AngularJS. Chrome has an environment to run JavaScript, CSS, and HTML, right?
Right.
So to actually build a command where you can, kind of, like, as they say that you need to learn the, all these rules like a professional, so you can bend them like an artist, right? So if you
Right.
really
Right.
want to become an artist, you do not want to be confined to that what React forces me to do. You need to understand that React is nothing but something built on top of JavaScript, right? So
Right.
first one should make sure that you understand the fundamentals, JavaScript, CSS, the fundamentals of DOM tree. How does browser work? How does Chrome work? How does the entire web stack work? That, like, what
Right.
happens when a request goes from browser to server? What are the different layers of caching in browser?
Right.
how are images served in browser, right? So once you understand all of this, it is totally okay to build your first project in vanilla JS. You do not use any framework. You build your
Right.
own structure, you build your own framework. Actually, like I remember that in very early years, actually, we were fortunate that we started learning web development at a time when none of these frameworks existed. So
Hmm.
there would be times when, like we will have to build a basic framework ourselves, that, this is what we want to do. So let's build a
Right.
library for this and then use it, right?
Right.
That is the kind of command you need to build, that, like as I said, that you can bend the rules like an artist. If you really want to be an artist, you should do not want to confine कि यार react में तो ऐसे ही होता है, तो बस ऐसे ही हो सकता है. यूज है यार, ये
Right.
करना है. रिएक्ट में ऐसे बनती है चीजें, मैं जाके रिएक्ट का सोर्स कोड चेंज कर दूंगा अगर जरूरत पड़ेगी तो. और आई कैन
Correct.
गो एंड सबमिट अ पैच टू रिएक्ट जेएस का जो कोर है कि यार दिस इज हाउ इट शुड बी, इफ यू गाइस लाइक इट, merge it to the core, right?
Hmm.
So fact is that like libraries will come and go, but the
Right.
fundamentals will remain. JavaScript is not going to change. At max this may happen that the sugar syntax might get added up, that like people might start using ES6, etc., but these fundamentals are not going to change. And once you learn them, then as I said, that you are not confined, like as they say that everyone can get to 90%, but getting to 100% is what matters. That is what makes you top 5%, top 2% of the engineers, right?
Right. Right.
So that bridge will only be crossed when you know the fundamentals. So focus on the fundamentals. Once you have understood them well, just pick any framework. Do not get married to any framework, because frameworks
Yeah.
will come and go, they will evolve, they will change.
Right. I think I used to tell some of my students earlier was the same thing, that try to understand that all these frameworks are solving for three things, like dividing your page into components, this front-end routing, and state management.
Yeah.
All of them do these three things. They do it in different ways. Somebody
Right.
call it template, somebody call it component, somebody call it render function, whatever you call it. Basically, they're dividing the page into a tree and they're trying to render it.
Right.
So that concept, if you understand, then that's going to be very helpful. Um,
Right.
so, there have been some, questions, that, for example, I think Shubh has asked that he's getting started with web dev, could make some, HTML, CSS based basic websites. He's asking like how to make really good websites using other coding language. I think what he means is like using JavaScript, TypeScript, and all of those things, like how to expand beyond that. So, I mean, what kind of things that he can do to go beyond this level?
Right. 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 So like it's great that you have started out with HTML and CSS. One thing that I will recommend is that get into habit of understanding the concepts behind CSS and HTML as well. CSS, on top people say that what is CSS? I'll just it is just to change color or font size or etc. It's much more than that. Get into habit of reading MDN documents or the RFCs of CSS which are published, to understand. So for example, what is box model, what is margin collapsing, how does the entire rendering engine works, right?
Right.
That is first step. That will make you very very powerful in the context that like it's not a hit and trial that मैंने कुछ बना दिया है and then I see and then I change and it works and it works.
Right.
But you know that what you are writing, how it gets rendered on the browser, how it exactly works. And just like that, if I have written this code, I know this is going to work on every browser, every machine, as long as they follow the norms defined by the RFCs or the MDN, right? Second, of course, you should learn JavaScript. As I mentioned, that JavaScript is the, using HTML, CSS, you can definitely make very captivating, very nice looking websites. But to add interactivity to it, like to transform it from a website to web application, you need JavaScript, right? JavaScript is basically, you may say is the kind of the electrical wiring of a home, that this is what makes it alive, right? So learn JavaScript. Start with learning the fundamentals of JavaScript. Again, to learn JavaScript, do not get into the mode of just like writing functions, but understand the underlying programming construct, that it's a functional programming language. How do functions work? There's a very good book that I can recommend, JavaScript: The Good Parts by
Yeah.
Marcus.
Yeah.
I'm trying to recall. Very famous guy. He was chief architect of Yahoo.
Douglas
Uh,
Crockford, I think.
Douglas
Right.
Crockford. Yes, yes, yes.
Yes.
Douglas Crockford. So
For
maybe
early
pick that.
publications.
Right, right, right. So maybe pick that book, understand the fundamentals, right? And then build on top of that. I think that is the very first step. Once you have covered these, then get on to, maybe pick up any framework of your choice, like any modern framework. Of course, do not pick up very old frameworks because they are already outdated. So React, Angular, Vue.js, all these are, fairly popular these days. Again, another thing is that do not be a slave to the framework. Make sure that you are reading source code of the framework as well whenever you can. And of course, like, you cannot say that now I am starting reading source code and I'll finish it all. It will be a journey of 1 to 3 years. So whichever, for example, whichever component you are using, make it a habit that you read the source code of that component just, because it's a code base of tens of thousands of lines. You cannot just cover it in one go. But
Right.
make sure that you understand whatever you are using from the framework, what is going on behind the scenes.
Right.
As we say that in all the automobile enthusiasts, that as an automobile enthusiast, you should have the habit of opening the bonnet and see what is going on. Not just that, I just drive a shiny car and I don't know what is going on inside it. Right. So get into the habit of opening the bonnet of these fancy cars like React, Angular that you might be driving.
Right, right, right. So we have some more questions that are coming in. I'm coming back to that, but before that, I want to breach another topic, which is about a little bit on the backend side. So this is about like there is that framework war happening on front end. Back end, when people try to learn, then there are a lot of people promoting different languages. Somebody says Node.js is best. Somebody would say Python is best. Even PHP, a lot of people say it is old, not used anymore. Still, a lot of people are still learning with, say
Right.
something Laravel has a very
Right.
modern way of writing PHP and all. And then Java, Spring Boot, obviously, big parts of the industry is
Right.
working on Java, Spring
Right.
Boot, etc. I think Golang is also picking up in the startup world. So I think the
Right.
backend world has fairly large number of languages, and all of them have a lot of users. Big companies are using.
Right.
So I mean, and I think two sides of the question is one is in the industry, how does certain languages become popular? Which one is picked up? And at an
Right.
individual level, how do I sort of decide that which one
Right.
should I pick up, which language should
Right.
I learn backend development in?
Right, right, right. Talking about the first one, that how do it happen that a particular language gets very popular among the a lot of large companies, small companies versus others, right? Actually, as opposed to the academic debate about the language constructs, or uh, say the capabilities of a language, etc., it might be interesting to kind of and this is something that even in conversations with a lot of CTOs, large senior tech architects, etc., generally the actual parameters to decide which language to build the tech stack on is driven by a lot of very different variables. The variable might even be that for which language can we hire engineers most easily, right? So
Right, right.
for example, if I want to build a project and I know that there's a very new fancy language or framework created which is much better than Java, but if I build on that, I know that in the entire world there are only 100 developers who know that,
Hmm.
right? Now how would I hire people who will build it?
Yeah.
On the other hand, I might know that Java is maybe a percent inferior to this choice, but I can, like, hiring developers for Java is super duper easy. Second is maybe
Right.
the entire ecosystem around that framework, that platform. That, for example, of course, if I'm building a large code base, a lot of functionalities I'm not going to build it myself, but I'm going to import libraries, use other frameworks in it. Now, if I pick up a language where there is no community support, there is no, like, just very similar to, let's say, Android versus iOS versus, let's say, some new mobile OS, right?
Yeah.
Even if there's a new mobile OS which is much superior to Android or iOS, but there are no apps on it. The App Store doesn't have
Yeah.
any apps. It doesn't have WhatsApp,
Exactly.
doesn't have Uber. You cannot use it even if it is better, right? So
Yes.
similar thing exists for languages as well. That, let's say, if I build something in Java, I know that pretty much every library, every functionality that I might need, there will be a framework library available for it. But let's say if I know that, let's say, Go performance of the language Go might be better than that of Java. However, I will be stuck at a lot of points. A lot of things I will have to, like if we need to do this, let's just write code for it. We cannot, there is no library available for that.
Right.
Or let's say if there are, if we get stuck in something, what is the community available for that? If there's a very new language, and if I run into a bug for that, or if I'm not able to understand something, and if I ask in Stack Overflow, there is no one who can answer to that. Versus if I ask the question on Stack Overflow on something related to Java, it's very easy to find answers. So all these also become very important variables. Like it's not just about that. As a techie, we might debate that. See, this language is much better than this because for whatever underlying construct, the semantics of the language, etc. But that alone is not the parameter basis which companies choose which framework to build on, right? That being said, as an individual, the second part, that as an individual developer, how do I make a choice, right? Of course, it's pretty confusing. Node.js, of course, Node.js is a framework. Underlying it is JavaScript as a language. Python, Ruby on Rails is also a framework. Ruby is the language. That is the underlying thing. PHP, Java, etc. Now, like what I have seen is that as an engineer, like to be very candid, in my entire career, I have built stuff in Java. Like if I just talk about the languages, framework will be of course a multiplier of that. Java, PHP, Java, of course JS, Ruby, Go, and let me see, and a little bit of Rust. So I have contributed to production level projects in these 6 languages, and then let's say at least another 5-10 languages which I just played around as a hobby, right? So like one thing that I would very strongly recommend is that as a developer, do not associate your identity as that I am a Python developer, I am a Java developer, I am a JS developer. Generally, it's a pattern that exists in the services companies where you get associated too strongly, or like there's another level where people even get associated to a framework, that I am a Rails developer or I am a let's say Django developer. Do not also get yourself married to any language or framework like that. You should build a strong command on, say, the design patterns. For example, let's say, what does Ruby on Rails provide? It provides bunch of, like it is basically model view controller architecture. Within that, it provides a set of design patterns using which you can very efficiently build systems, right? And it provide another thing called data access objects, DAO, right? Now, DAO is not unique to Rails. DAO also exists in Spring Boot. DAO also exists in the frameworks provided by Node.js. DAO also exists in Rails, right? Important is that you understand how does data access objects work. What is the design pattern architecture of DAO? Important is that you understand what is MVC. So, for example, Django is also MVC. Ruby on Rails is also MVC. Spring Boot is not. In Spring Boot is inversion of control, which is a slightly different design pattern, right? Important is that you understand what is inversion of control, right? If you understand these fundamental concepts, these design patterns, then picking up any new framework or language will maximum take you 1 to 2 weeks, because these are very common across all. So again, choosing any is okay, but make sure that you are not remaining superficial to just reading documentation of the framework and just copy pasting the code, but you understand that what are the design patterns, architectural patterns used in the framework. And always be willing to explore new things. If some company says that you have been coding on Ruby on Rails, but our role is for Java Spring Boot, your answer shouldn't be, okay, then I cannot do it. Your answer should be, so what? Like Ruby on Rails is a framework. I understand all the fundamental design patterns. I can learn Java Spring Boot quickly, and I can also apply the same principles in Java and Spring Boot as well. I think building that confidence is very important. As a software engineer, like you want to be a great software engineer, you do not want to be a great Ruby on Rails developer. Like as a Ruby on Rails developer, your growth gets very, very limited. But if you position yourself as a really good software engineer, then you have a lot more growth opportunities.
Right. I think so. When I was in college, and I used to think the same thing, like about languages. And when I talked to more senior engineers, I started finding out a pattern that if somebody is n number of years experienced, then most likely they have worked in a sort of n number of languages in production, and they have experimented with sort of two n number of languages. Like if we
Yeah.
find somebody 5 years experienced, they would be having worked in production with 4 or 5 languages, and maybe 8 or 10 languages they have experimented with. So
Right.
after finding that pattern in 3 4 people, then I thought that no, I have to not think of myself as like I used to very interested in Android and Java only. And I thought no, I can't stay focused only on Android and Java. It seems like everybody does explore things. It's not like you can
Right.
do only one thing. Right, very interesting. So there is actually a question that has come up from Anoop, and I think this might be sort of a little more in terms of learning and development oriented question rather than particularly about the tech itself. But I think it's a question that's common. That he's in a service company and he's working as a Spring Boot developer, and he feels that there is a lot of pressure and there is not a lot of support, and he's struggling. So some advice. It seems a lot like exactly the persona, the kind of people who join Scalar Academy, the kind of early days. These kind of similar
Right.
things I have also heard. So
Right.
advice for him.
Right. Would love to hear your thoughts about it, now, before I go, because I'm sure
Right.
you have kind of guided quite a few, people in the similar situation.
Yes. Very recently, actually, I have people in a similar situation. So I think there are two, three levels of support, I feel. I mean, one is like self-supports people have to develop a little bit. That is, you will have to decide that, okay, I really want to grow beyond this and I want to learn something. And when you decide that, then you have to set up time for yourself that, okay, 2 3 hours in a day, I have to set out time for myself. And then you have to decide that, okay, this is something that I want to learn, and whether you want to build some side projects, or even before that, if you want to just go and learn something, so you have to set out time to learn. And you should not take too much time just pure learning, that I will see videos and keep learning for 3 months, 4 months. That will obviously never work. Maybe 1 or 2 weeks you do that, and then you start building things, some side projects you start to do. That's, I think, at least just sort of getting the engine started, I feel. Then the next level which comes is, getting feedback starts becoming important. And I feel there are a lot of ways that can happen. Maybe you discover a peer network among your friends with whom you can collaborate together for a project where the feedback might be available. If you don't find such a peer network, then obviously, sort of coding boot camps are there, something like what even Scalar runs, those kind of things are there. Matlab, somewhere or the other, you need to discover that ecosystem, however you find it. But you need that ecosystem where, you can get feedback on what you are learning.
Right.
And you get a sort of community where also, I think, if you are learning something, if you show that I have learned, say, for example, recently we were doing this 100 days of code thing on our Discord server, interview bit. You go to interview bit, solve some questions, and do 100 days of code. A lot of people got back to us on Discord and they said that their ranking on interview bit and on other websites also, Hacker Rank, LeetCode, everywhere has been increasing. So what is the, I mean, factor that worked there? That they are solving a question, they're showing it to their friends, and people are reacting to that, sending, clapping hands or something to that. So you need that, sort of community kind of a place where you show your progress to others, others show your progress to you, and you can grow. So yeah, you have to discover that community. That needs to be the second place. And then, I think you will obviously need to find some sort of mentor, whatever you are
Mm.
learning, whether it is Spring Boot, whether you want to learn something like Node, Rails, whatever. You need to find somebody who has also learned that same thing sometime earlier in life. And whenever you are on the right track or not on the right track, they can guide you. I think these three things make for the, best possible thing. But I think you have probably guided even more people. So, anything additional to that, you can add to that.
Right. Right. No, I think the most important part, in my opinion, of course, out of all the things that, all the different parts of the support system that you talked about, surrounding yourself with people
Hmm.
who are excited about tech, know something about tech, with who you can discuss, brainstorm, find solutions together. I think that is the most important part. Uh, as Arnav also mentioned, you might be able to find that ecosystem at workplace, among your friend circles and online communities. or as a part of any of the online learning platforms. Like, it is possible to find them at different places. But I think surrounding yourself with the people who are better than you in tech, and you are kind of humble enough and have gratitude to learn from them. I think that's what generally biggest value add is. But
Yeah, yeah,
like, one thing is that, trust me, Anup, another thing I will also tell you is that the more you face bigger challenges and struggles in earlier career, more it is going to reward you later. Like, in a way, there's a silver line. Like, if you are, let's say, struggling, that means that you are being given challenges that you are currently not capable of. And what is that is going to lead to? That is going to make you more capable, right? So do not
right.
feel bad about it. Do not let it give you stress. Take it in a positive steed as well. That, I am getting an opportunity to work on harder stuff. If you just keep working on easy stuff, you will not build your capabilities.
Right, 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 right. I think another term that I find a lot, I think at least in sort of smarter people on Twitter, etc., also talk about is high intent and high agency people. So
Right.
having those kind of people around you is very important. And actually, when I hear actually that conversation also, from college people about tier one, tier two, tier three college kind of things, I feel there is really no difference in curriculum, teachers, and all that. But maybe sometimes when people say tier three college, we did not get opportunities, I sometimes feel is because the batch size is so small.
Yeah.
There are not sufficient people with whom you can create a group who will keep pushing each other.
Correct.
That is probably sometimes make the difference between tier one college, like say, the college I graduated from, in that kind of terminology, if you say it will become tier one. So I would say what is the most valuable thing was the batch size is very big. So I was
Right.
interested in web development, mobile development. In this, there were 15 more other people also
Right.
interested, equally as
Right.
me. And
Right.
sometimes I am not feeling like doing something. I see that, oh, they are doing something. So, okay, I will also push myself to do it. I think
Right.
that ecosystem seems to be very important. And
Correct.
whenever I have taught cohorts, I have
Right.
heard this from people as well who have told me that, this place I get like a ecosystem where there are other people who are also interested in doing things.
Right.
Every day they're doing something new. And I also then feel like doing something new. So that, I think, finding that out is super, super
Right.
helpful.
Right. Right.
So next up, we have, I think, actually some more questions have come in. So Mithun has asked a interesting question. Is that he's working in backend again, 2 years in his career, and didn't get a chance to work on UI.
Right.
So what can be the approach to move towards UI? He wants to grow into UI.
Right, right, right. No, Mithun, so, like, actually the steps will be pretty similar, for someone just starting out, or, for you as well. That first, of course, if you are already coding in JavaScript, and if you already have, you might have used JavaScript in the backend as well. But if you want to kind of build capabilities on the front end side, first important step is understanding the web architecture stack. That how do browser interact with the backend services? How do browser exactly work, right? Because that's the environment you need to play in. As a good backend engineer, for example, you understand that how do operating system work, right? How do servers work at the first place? Because only then you can optimize. Only then you can do your high scalability design, or you can do the backend design. So similarly,
Right.
to become a good front end engineer, you need to understand the environment in which you will be playing first. Then you need to learn the tools. The tools are basically JavaScript, uh, CSS, HTML. CSS and HTML, like CSS and HTML in themselves are also fairly interesting and complex technologies, actually.
Right.
Like, for example, there is DOM tree, render tree that gets created out of the HTML document within the browser. And then CSS is applied to kind of, like, render the render tree which is created internally in the browser. So understanding all of these will help. And of course, start building out. Most important is building out. Pick up any of the frameworks, start building things out. That is the, like, I think, like, no rocket science, but start with the fundamentals and then go on the top, rather than just learning superficially, that I just picked up a framework, did two things, it worked, I don't know how it's working. That
Right.
approach I would suggest on avoiding.
Another thing I really love suggesting to people is try to make simple 2D games like 2048
Correct.
kind of game.
Correct.
Those things, like, because the design of the game, like the UI design, teaches you UI development. and then the game logic teaches you architecture as well a lot.
Right.
So
Right.
that very holistically teaches you front end development.
Right.
So yeah. Um, then I will move on to another question, which among the questions we had already picked up from the community earlier. So, and this is a little bit, I think maybe can be said controversial as well, but it's an important, I think, question to answer, which is, a lot of opinions come around this that do web developers need to cover data structures, algorithms, and system design? And some people say that, for entry level web development role, why should you do competitive programming? There is
Right.
discussion around that. There's also some
Right.
people say that you can't really grow unless you know DSA well. System
Right.
design also gets involved. So I
Right.
think it's a cloudy topic, and I think there are nuances to this answer for junior
Correct.
developers as well as senior developers. So if you could shed some light on this.
Correct. 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 No, so again, like generally most of the things I always have duality, and there is no black and white answer that don't do DSA is also incorrect, and you
Yeah.
need to be the best competitive programmer out there in the world to make any career is also incorrect, right?
Right.
Nuances are that, see, competitive programming, I can say, is definitely not necessary. If I look at, say, 100 best developers that I know, with
Right.
experience, 5, 10, 12, 15 years of experience, I would say only 5% of them in their college days would have done advanced competitive programming, right? So trust me, it's like no matter what someone tells you, doing competitive programming is not a necessary condition to make a good great career in software engineering. It definitely is a good thing to do. At the same time, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with doing competitive programming. What is necessary to make a great career in software engineering, not just web development but software engineering in general, is having understanding of like the tools are, let's say, when we talk about various data structures,
Right.
they are basically tools to make more efficient systems. When we say that, let's say, I can implement this in login instead of n square, essentially I am saying that this is a piece of software which is much more optimized, much more, it will work much more smoothly. If I correlate with, let's say, something that we use day to day, let's say there is a WhatsApp. We all use WhatsApp every day, right? When
Yeah.
I'm typing a word in the WhatsApp, on the top, probably WhatsApp will suggest me 3, 4 words, right? And then I
Right.
can, instead of typing it fully, I can just pick one. How is that working? Essentially, internally in WhatsApp, it has a dictionary of all the English words, right?
Right.
And there is a data structure called try.
Right.
Uh, Using try, like one approach could be, let's say, someone who doesn't know the tools which are different data structures which can turn a system very, very efficient. What I would do to build this feature is, of course, if I want, there are, let's say, two different people building WhatsApp. They both know that if we want people to use our application, our app, we need to build this feature, right? Now, one guy will build it that, ठीक है, मेरे पास dictionary के सारे word है. I'll run a loop through all of them. I'll find out which word might be closest to it, and I'll try to show that. That is going to be an app which is going to consume a lot more battery. It is going to drain your battery very, very quickly. It is going to keep hanging a lot, because every time you are typing something, it is running such a large loop of maybe 100,000 iterations or so, that probably you will not be even able to use this app happily. On the other hand, if someone uses try to implement this, this is going to be an app which doesn't consume battery, is very smooth. You can type much faster. Very natural that the person who knows these tools will be able to create better apps, right? So
Right.
you need to learn the data structures algorithm, not with the intent of, let's say, like, see, one very big difference is that actually in our education system and in our society as well, we are very heavily trained to crack exams. That यार ये exam crack करना है, IIT crack करना है, interview crack करना है, right? Do not, like, in corporate and work, it doesn't work like that. It's not that
Right.
I will learn DSA and then I will crack something. Learn DSA with the intent that, fine, of course, it will help you in the interviews as well, but it will also make you very effective programmer. Like, you will be able to build softwares which are really very efficient. You do not want that you have built a web app or mobile app which always keeps on hanging. right? And your users keep abusing you, यार कि यार इनसे ढंग से बनाते नहीं आता क्या बनाया है, right?
Correct,
You
correct, correct.
want to be that developer who builds an app who can make applications or tools which people love, and data
Right.
structures can help you with that. Data structures actually give you that superpower to build that kind of applications.
Correct, correct,
So
correct.
even as a web developer, knowledge of data science is necessary. Again,
Right,
if
right.
you want to be top 5%, it's necessary. If you want to be somewhere in the bottom 90%, fine, you can avoid learning it. You can be in the bottom of the pyramid. You can survive. No question about that. But
Right, right.
without learning it, you definitely shouldn't hope to be at the top 5% or top 2% developers. Same goes with the system design as well. System design, I can break it into two parts. One is the architectural design, etc. Second is that, even as a web developer, having, like, see, one of the most important thing that, really smart, really, kind of web developers that companies run after, what they have capability to do is they can, like, I can tell you this, thing from my career journey. When I had joined fab.com, the average page load time of the website was about 7 seconds. That if someone types in fab.com or any page of fab.com, it will take 7 seconds for entire page to load. And
Right.
then we knew that it is going to lead to less sales. It is going to cost us money, because a user who is having to wait a lot for the page to open, they will buy less, versus someone who can just, if the website just works like that, it is going to sell more. So we
Yeah,
targeted that
Amazon
we
did
will.
that study, na? Every one
Yes,
second
yes,
of
yes.
increase, 20% people drop off.
Right. So, like, this was an experiment done by Amazon, that artificially they slowed down their website, and
Yeah.
then they tried to monitor that how much money they are losing, every day. And back then, this was a very old, I think 2011 or sometime they had done this. Back
Right.
then, like, with each reduction of 500 millisecond in, in the page load time, they were losing millions of dollars. Actually tens of millions of dollars every day. So this is how much
Right.
value is, right? Now, to actually, if I ask you that, yaar, ye website hai, it takes 7 seconds to load, get it to a state where it takes 3 seconds to load or 2 seconds to load, right?
Right.
That is going to need solid understanding of system design, right? You need to see that what is the time to first byte coming into the system. If that is low, then I need to go and speak with the folks managing the servers, that, yeah, TTF, like the word for time to first byte is TTFB. Basically, like, you have to optimize my TTFB. Then you need to see how much data is being transferred. Is it compressed, not compressed, right? Is there excessive data coming or not coming? Because you cannot change the internet speed of the user, right? You cannot change that. Internet speed of the user is
Correct.
what it is. So you have to, reduce your payload or compress it, or use various layers of caching. Now, all of this is nothing but system design, right? So
Right.
again, if you want to be the rockstar web developer, jisko, matlab, the kind of people, uh, like, again, not the best analogy, but I'll still give it, that the kind of developers, if you tell the CTO ki, yaar, I am thinking of losing, he is behind you ki, yaar, I will do whatever it takes, but I cannot lose you. I cannot let you
Right.
go from the team, right? So if you want to be
Right.
that developer, right? So even
Hmm.
as a web developer, you have to learn system design. Otherwise, you will be cog in the wheel, that someone tells you
Hmm.
कि यार ऐसी फोटो है, ऐसा HTML लिख देगा, तुमने लिख के दे दिया, but you are not really important then. That's
Right.
the brutal truth, that if you are someone who just give a transactional work, then you are just a cog in the wheel. You are not really important for anyone.
Right. 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 One actually from this point, because of the design part and who cannot let go from that piece, I remember one thing is, like, I used to tell a lot of my students that when you just graduate out of college and you will join a company as a fresher, then first day you join the team, no, so everybody will direct you to one guy in the team, a guy or girl, some person in the team. They will direct you to and say that this person will explain to you the whole project structure. Day one, this is what happens every time you join a tech team. I used to tell them that, remember that person, remember how he works, and try to become like that person. Because every team has that person who has a mental image of the whole project. And every time new people join in, everybody says, ask that person. He will explain how everything is happening. So try to become like that person. And that person is very strong in system design. That's why that person can always explain to you how the entire system is working.
Right.
So uh, that's I think very nicely put. So we
Yeah.
have a lot of questions coming in, and I think some of them are very interesting. So we have, I think, Sai Ashwant has asked that, as an engineering student, what is the best time to learn full stack development?
Best time to learn full stack developer. Yeah, right now is the best time. you know, the sooner you start learning, better it is. Even someone who is in first year engineering, I was actually yesterday itself. I was meeting another edtech entrepreneur, of one of the largest edtech companies, and we were talking about the same thing. That why do people after 10th class, why do people instead of the amount of hard work and intellect that goes into, let's say, preparing for JEE, imagine if someone spends that much hard work and intellectual capability into just learning software engineering. By the time person graduates from 12th, he would be maybe an engineer who can start earning really well into the top companies right then, right? So it is never early, and it is also never too late. It's neither too early or too late. Wherever you are, start learning it, because it's very, very enabling. It's, let's say, similar to being like, we all have imaginations, we all have ideas, right? Technology, of course, is eating the world. Once you learn full stack developer, it's, in a way, I see it as a superpower, that whatever ideas you might have, you can bring it into reality, end to end, just yourself, right? Otherwise, of course, we all have friends who will keep talking about very fancy ideas they have, but yeah, I need help of an engineer to help me build it. But if you just learn it, you kind of had a superpower, and it is never too early or too late to earn a superpower.
Right. There is this question. I really want to take this up. So Venkat has asked that he's a CA student, and he's asking if he can be a software developer and enter into the IT industry, and how much time it will take. Just wanted to put this question to you because there recently some very inspirational stories of people very far away from IT world who have joined Scalar Academy. So maybe you can share some of those instances. I was just seeing in the
Oh,
internal
wow,
Slack channel
yeah.
you had shared.
Yeah. No, so actually, one actually very interesting happens. Uh, of course, industry is very now is totally companies do not care about degree. Actually, even the Google, Facebook, Tesla, they all have officially said that for any of the roles that in our tech teams, there is no need of
Right.
any degree, right? Second, very, very powerful that thing that I have observed, that someone who has exposure to a slightly different field. So, for example, as a CA person, you will have a lot more exposure to, say, how financial structures work, how, let's say, how revenues are structured, how balance sheets are structured. And when you also build command on software engineering, the kind of value and impact you can add to, let's say, a tech company is substantially more than someone who only knows tech, right? Because you would be able to come up with, like, there is a word for it which is actually very commonly used in American universities. If I, by any chance, Arnav, do you remember that, the cross functional
Polymath.
learning or something? Polymath, right? That when
Yeah.
you have
Polymath. That kind of person. Yeah.
command on diverse backgrounds, for example, finance and tech, the kind of
Right.
value that you can create for the organization is massive. Even, generally most of the entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs, if you see, they would be, people with very strong command on different domains. So, like, of course, you can IT, computer science, as often perceived, it's not rocket science. That is one thing that I can tell you. I can talk about my own story. Before I joined college after 12th class, when I was already 18, 19-year-old, before that, I had never even touched a computer. I had only seen computers from a distance. But after that also, I was able to kind of quickly build a good command, and I like to believe that I'm a decent engineer, at least for myself. Others might tell me whether I am or not, but I at least like to believe so. So yeah, like, even if you are a CA student, you can totally join. In Scalar, we have seen people with very, very fascinating backgrounds joining the program. Like, we had a serving IPS officer joining the program because, and actually, I had a one-on-one with the person. He was like that, at the grassroots level, I see so many issues that can be solved using tech, and I want to build command on tech so that I can get them implemented in my department, right? There is a gentleman with almost 20 years of experience running his own service company for almost 15 years. He wanted to kind of learn that, like, there are senior investment associates who join that, I will learn it and then I will be able to make better investment decisions into tech companies. So, very fascinating time where people from very, very diverse backgrounds do join, learn, build strong command, and, end up creating much bigger impact than someone with pure tech background might be able to create.
Right. That's of course very interesting. And yeah, I think nobody should think this way that I'm from a
Yeah.
different background, so it won't be possible. I
Right.
also completely agree with that.
Right.
Uh, I have one more question for you. Before that, there is a question from Lakshay, which I would like to answer. Lakshay asked that he has a lack of ecosystem around, but he's very enthusiastic for programming.
Yeah.
And where can he find an ecosystem online? So, if you do not know, Lakshay, our Discord server recently crossed 50,000 active users. I would definitely recommend you to join our Discord server. And we have got so many things happening there. We have got every day some learning is happening on data structures algorithms, some community learning class happening. There is an open source channel where I myself am very active. We are working on a lot of web dev projects. Actually, we are building a social media app, a forum app, a matrimony site clone. Also, we are making a lot of fun stuff. We are building. So definitely come over there. You will find a lot of people and all the time there are some 500,000 people always online. Everybody's talking about technology, like same high intent, high agency atmosphere. You will get there. So I highly recommend you definitely join. And then going to this question, I think it's actually internal question that came from our Discord community for Abhimanyu is how are senior front-end engineers and architects evaluated? So, I think at a entry level role, it's okay, DOM and all, event listeners and all, understanding of that. Maybe people are grilling on basic JS. But when you're hiring somebody senior, experienced person as an architect on front end, then what are things are we looking for there?
Got it. Uh, so see, like if I can talk about my like let's say if I'm taking someone's interview, first and foremost thing that I would care about is as I mentioned that not the buzzwords. Actually, someone just throwing buzzwords becomes a usually negative thing. But someone who knows how are things working below, right? Below the what is visible, right? So for example, if I see that someone who is a senior front-end engineer but doesn't know how JavaScript work, what are the fundamental constructs of JavaScript as a language, definitely that person is not going ahead, right? I actually don't care that much whether you know a specific API or component type or something of React. That's okay, I don't care. You will read the documentation, you will understand that. Second thing that when it comes to let's say the framework level at a senior position, what I would like to see is that you understand the design patterns. That if I
Right.
ask you, let's say if I ask you that how would you, if you were to build something like React, what would the architecture of the library look like, right? Whether you are able to think of that or not, right? Or like it's not React, but let's say I will rather talk about that if you need to build a virtual DOM library, that is what React provides as well. That the entire DOM is not rendered all the time, but it is kept as a virtual DOM and then it is rendered on demand when it needs to be visible, and that is how it is able to build very large scale UIs efficiently as well. So my question to you would be, how would you design this library? Can you design that, right? I don't care whether you have used React's virtual DOM or not, whether you know that which component you can use for to create virtual DOM or not. I don't care about that, but I would care about whether can you think about it or not, right? And can you design it or not? Of course, a very strong command on the entire web stack architecture is important. Website optimization techniques is important. Uh, Apart from all of these are hardcore tech related stuff. Like even for example, if you are a senior, if you have spent quite few years in front end, if you do not know how prototypal inheritance work in JavaScript, how do closures work, what is the nature of functional programming of JavaScript, again it's a red flag for me that you do not know the basics. Then how would you build anything large scale? Uh, then apart from the hard skills, of course, there will be a little bit of behavioral and cultural thing that are become more important as experience increases, because you will
Right.
have bunch of younger engineers working under you, with you. Um, so do you have the leadership qualities? Can you keep a team of engineers motivated? Can you make sure that you make their what you expect from them, what their goals, very very clear to them, right?
Right.
um, how do you manage, of course, in any team there would be times when there are harder deadlines to achieve. What is your thought process about managing them, right, where people
Right.
do not get burned out? So like at senior positions, often people say that being someone saying that I will work 24 hours and we will do night out, that's the red flag. If you are planning for that as a senior person, then that means you are not planning well. All right.
Hmm.
But planning capabilities where you make sure that things can get executed without kind of burning people out, etc., that's I think what most of the companies look for.
Right. 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 Yeah. Yeah. Of course, I mean, senior position would be leading people, so that is
Right.
super important for sure.
Right.
So we are just over 1 hour. I will take one last question from the
Sure.
chat that has come in. Little tangential from I think web development side. Bhargav has asked that what's your take on data engineering role? So he's getting some data engineering opportunity, and he's currently at a B2B e-commerce company making APIs, and he's saying same thing on repeat. Uh, so I think I would like Abhimanyu to take up both the things. One is, of course, what's your take on data engineering? How about that opportunity? Second thing I would say, I think when somebody says that they have been building APIs for a while and things on repeat, I think there is still a lot of learning to be done there.
Right.
Even if you are I have faced a lot of people who have been working on the same API for a long, long time, but if you ask them to build a pagination or caching solution from ground up, they
Right.
might not have had experience. So I think there is
Right.
depth to be garnered
Right.
inside that as well. So I think both
Right.
pieces. What are your point of view on that?
Right. Right. First point, that data engineering role are definitely very good roles. I don't know, for whatever reason often people think that these are not good roles, but actually data engineering is a very challenging field. You get to manage very large scales of system design. Uh, in most of the teams, most of the companies, a data engineering team will always be handling very large amounts of data. So you will have to learn how distributed data storage works, how data pipelines are created. So you will definitely get a lot of learnings in terms of large scale system design, which definitely are very useful as a software engineer. So unknown company, of course, see, the thing about unknown companies is that 90% of the best companies in the world, none of us would have heard their names, right? It's natural, right? There are so many, like in today's world, we only know names of 5, 10, 20 companies which are largest, but largest doesn't necessarily translate to the best, right?
Hmm.
So unknown, when you say unknown, I would say research about them. I'm sure that internet is a great source of information, so you can always research about them, figure out who are the people working there, what their backgrounds are, what kind of work are they doing, right? You not having heard about the company before, that's totally okay. The fact is that you wouldn't have heard name of 90% of the best companies out there in the world, and that's natural. Even I wouldn't have heard their names, right? Because there
Hmm.
are so many. So that is okay, do not worry about that, but research about people, because who you work with is one of the most important thing, because you learn from them.
Right.
Look at exact quality of work, and what roles, responsibilities you will have. If these parameters look good, I think you can consider it. On the flip side, however, that, as Arnav was also saying, that building APIs is again in no way any less work. But yes, if in your current job, if it is not really very exciting, there are no challenges, that's all right. But even in API development, there are a lot of nuances that exist that you can learn more on. Various layers of caching, pagination, adding more features, just making your APIs, resistant to high scale. That, let's say, if one of your endpoint start getting 10,000 RPM, if one of your endpoint start getting 10,000 requests per minute, Would it still work or will it go down? If it will go down, then how are you going to manage that, right? So there are a lot of challenges that exist in API development as well, but of course it depends from team to project, company to company. If at your company it is not giving you a good opportunity, then there is no harm in considering the data engineering role. But again, do proper research before deciding.
Right, right. Uh, I think we are almost up on time, but I'll still add one more question because it's an interesting
Okay.
question that has come up. So Arun has asked, 15 plus years of experience in tech across technologies. So do you suggest a tech role or managerial role? I think
Right.
people who are senior might have this kind of dilemma.
Yeah. No, so actually, again, not a black and white thing. Both are good paths. uh, Depends more on that where do you find your superpower. Do you think you can create a lot more impact, contributing to tech? That is what your real thing is. Or do you think you can create a lot more impact, managing things as well? One fact is that even as a manager, like for example Sundar Pichai is one big example, right? He doesn't write code on day-to-day basis, but the kind of value that he adds to Google is massive, right? So managerial roles are also good. However, one thing that is important is that if you are working in any company where the center play is technology, for example Google, Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, all these companies, the central play is technology, right? So even as in a managerial role, you will have to have very strong command on tech, right? Even if like being in managerial role at such high tech impact companies doesn't mean that you get away from tech, because the people you will be working with closely are going to be all techies, and unless you understand what they are doing, what they are planning, you cannot really manage them well if you do not have command on the things as much as they do. So directionally which path you should pick depends on, as I mentioned, that what you enjoy more, where you believe you can make a bigger mark. But despite of the direction you take, a solid command on technology is needed on either side. So do not think that if I get into managerial role I can live without tech, because without command on tech you will not be able to be the high impact, high growth engineering manager or engineering director.
Right, right, right. So that's a great answer. And on that, I will wrap this up as well because we have crossed 1 hour as well. So, I see that there are a lot of still questions. Some are coming in. Feel free to put them in the comments, and we will definitely get back to you on the comments, and we will definitely pick up comments as topics for the next conversation also that we have. This has been, I think, very interesting, and almost like 80-90 people were live throughout 1 hour of the discussion. If you really love this kind of topic and this kind of discussions, just definitely like this video, subscribe to our channel. We keep having these kind of discussions every Saturday and Sunday in the evenings. Would love to keep getting you back here with your questions so that we can answer them. Thank you everybody for turning in, and thank you Abhimanyu for sharing your time.
Awesome. No, always happy, and everyone looking forward to sync up with you again on next Sunday. Always love to interact with the tech community, and there's a lot to learn from each other. See you all next week. Bye bye.
Okay, okay. Bye everybody.